Thank you everybody for coming out on the last session of the show here, and we plan to make this an entertaining session before you jump onto your planes, trains, and automobiles to get out of here. My name's Andy Howard. I'm the founder and managing director of Howard & Associates, which is a consulting company that helps organizations deploy video communications, so video streaming, video conferencing, and often the integration of the two. So that's what we're going to be talking about today is integration of streaming media with video conferencing and unified communications solutions. Again, quick bio about me. There's some of the clients that I've worked with, mostly large organizations, corporations, and universities. So let me just go down the row here and introduce our panelists, and I'll have you do a real quick introduction on who you are and what you do. And David, why don't you start us off?
Sure. Would you mind switching me over?
Oh, do you need that for now?
Do you want to do, this is the intro, right?
Well, no, I was going to just do a real quick 2-second thing on
Sure. Then in 2 seconds, I'm David Gibbons from Ustream. Nice to be here.
Aaron.
Good afternoon. I'm Aaron Rowe with Deloitte. Harold Stark from Aetna.
Jackson Hayek with Upper Iowa University.
All right. So, you know, I put together a real quick slide to sort of frame the content here. And, you know, the most common way of integrating video conferencing with video streaming is to use the video conferencing as an input source into the streaming system. So you can see there's a variety of different ways that people capture content. One might be a camera directly at the source. Sometimes people will use an encoder decoder to trunk a video back to a central location and then stream it out from there. But in a lot of cases, what people are doing is to use video conferencing. So for example, telepresence rooms or video conference rooms, they already have nice furniture. They've got good lighting and good sound and mics and cameras. And those can be a source for the video stream from basically any location. So you send the stream back from one location back to a central site where they do the production and then stream it out from there. And more frequently, people are even using, that's not a very good picture, but on the bottom, that's Skype for Business. So even your unified communications solutions can start to become the source for your streaming events. And then conversely, a lot of more frequently, the video conferencing system can also be used to distribute the content. So if you have some large sites where you want people to congregate in conference rooms, that people can huddle up in a conference room and view an event over the video conferencing system as well. And I think some of the big benefits there are the ability to leverage your existing investments in your video conferencing rooms. Like I said, the furniture, the lights, all that good stuff, especially for a telepresence or immersive telepresence types rooms. It allows you to have presenters in multiple locations. So for example, if the CEO was in New York, the CFO was in Chicago, and the CMO was in London, all three of those people could be a part of the same webcast, and you can connect them using video conferencing and then stream that out from a central location. And then it also gives you a lot of flexibility. I think Aaron will touch on this point quite a bit, is that it allows the presenter to basically be anywhere. Anywhere that you have the ability to deliver video back from a central location, you can then stream that content out. So as I said, it provides a lot of great advantages, and I think we'll have some great discussion about how the individual organizations have implemented these solutions. So with that, I will give it to David and let him talk about what Ustream does in this space.
Thanks, Andy. David Gibbons from Ustream. I head up the product and marketing functions for Ustream. And we believe that we can use video to help companies to be more productive and transparent, particularly with their employees. We've been kind of drawn into this unified communications space a little bit unintentionally. So we started obviously as a big streaming platform that people use to go live from anything from using a simple webcam on their computer all the way up to a full-blown broadcast production setup. And people use this for all kinds of applications. And what we discovered was that a number of them were asking us, how do I connect the Ustream account that I've got with our internal infrastructure for unified communications? And so we started to look into that. In fact, we started to survey people, and we found out that as many as 59% of our paying customers, we have about 5,000 companies that pay us to use our service, were actually using it for internal communications of some kind. Not all of them, of course, connecting to a unified communications system, but certainly for that application. And that was why we were getting these requests from people to help them figure out how to use the infrastructure that they already have. And so once we discovered that, we thought we better find out what these people want to do and what's driving them. And we discovered a lot of the same drivers that Andy was just touching on. Basically, they wanted to go from an occasional use where they were doing one-to-one communications to reaching the entire company. So in exactly the same format that they were used to working in a conference room with a telepresence system, for example, they wanted to go from there to something that would let them engage their entire employee base inside their buildings and inside their office locations and also out in the field. And that's just struck us as A, a very interesting use case as people use video more and more in enterprises, and B, it just struck us as a great way for us to participate in this ecosystem and be a part of the solution. And then another driver, as Andy mentioned, was they were encountering the complexity of production in some cases. A lot of companies have a dedicated studio space, but it's kind of reserved for special or very high-end productions, like it's the CEO telling everybody about the strategy or the executive team doing a once-per-year briefing. And as they looked to do those types of communications more often, they ran into the problem of production complexity. They were like, well, we don't really know if we can get a video team to this other location that we have a few execs in who are going to speak, or even a few product managers or sales managers who want to speak. And it's kind of complicated to get the lighting right, to get the cameras pointed, to get people who can manage that and make it look great. But on the other hand, we've already made this investment in unified communication systems, which already solve a lot of those problems. They look great, they automatically focus, they can track people in the room. We'd love to use those as the starting point from which to stream. And of course, they solve that multiple participant problem where several different people are contributing from different rooms that are already connected, and you want to turn that into a single production of the whole. Then another driver that we discovered was the complexity that comes from the bring your own device policy that a lot of organizations have. As employees are encouraged more to work on their personal devices and to use those to keep up with email or to execute contracts or to track customer records, of course they expect that they'll be able to consume communications inside the company, video communications from the rest of the team in exactly the same way. But a lot of the existing and installed telepresence systems really don't provide a very good mobile compatibility option. So they were turning to us again to figure out how can I make this easy for a field sales rep to watch on their mobile phone when they have 15 minutes to catch up on the content. And then lastly, security. Of course, the existing unified communication systems are built to be secure, but when you blow them open in this way and use them to communicate broadly to the entire customer base, you have kind of messed with the way that they were fundamentally put together, and it raises a bunch of new concerns that we're glad to address at Ustream that help to ensure that you can keep the transmission of your video information secure, and that you can also track who's connecting to it, so you've got a good sense of exactly who got in later, and you can satisfy all of the internal requirements about that. So those were the things that kind of drew us into this world. We're very glad to have a seat at this table. Thank you for inviting us, and looking forward to the discussion.
Wow, how do you top that? I don't have any fancy slides or anything, but so I would agree with everything both of these guys have said so far. Everything we do today is really about engaging our audience, and what we've found is leveraging the assets and the investments we've made in video conferencing, video collaboration, unified communications only helps us get there faster. We don't have fancy high-end studios. However, if it's I would call it a high-risk event, something Eminence building, we're going to send our audience to a rented studio for those type of things. But today, we're leveraging all of our assets that we have available to us to do just what you explained. And again, it's really about moving away from the old-fashioned PowerPoint, I'm standing here talking, look at my slide deck, let me show you what we can do, to how can we engage our audience? How can we make a leader of 50,000 people connect to every one of the people and help them feel that they're connected to him or her in that transparent conversation. It's also about, for us, it's also about collecting the data, right? Showing the feedback, the polling, the questions and answers. You know, it's not just about people watching TV anymore. It's about bringing the content into the stream of the TV. So we're looking really at a lot of production features to overlay the graphical data that would be part of a PowerPoint slide more into the video so it feels like it's all integrated. One thing we know is our customers, my customers, expect world class. They expect, you know, what they go home at night and turn the TV on to see, and that's what they're rating us against. Mm-hmm. And so when they click that link, you know, their expectations are already set, you know, higher than, you know, we could really deliver on a shoestring budget. So we really have to think through how can we deliver the same high quality experience, you know, with what we have.
And you have a huge investment in video conferencing. I mean, you have at least one video conference room in pretty much every location. And
yeah, in the U.S. alone.
VNOC and
yeah, in the U.S. alone, we have over 300 plus video rooms, and those range from, you know, your traditional telepresence rooms to two-screen video conference rooms. And then, of course, yeah, we have a VNOC, so our own service organization that's focused on the successful end-to-end delivery of every scheduled video conference.
so there's already some built-in goodness there that you know the video
Yep.
conference piece is going to work, and then it's a matter of getting the video streaming to talk to that and work properly.
Yep.
And then the other big reason for that is just due to the lack of knowledge of where the executive is going to be at any one time, right? Because
Yeah, I mean,
your guys will be anywhere.
So I mean,
It's
right now
hard to schedule.
we're working on an event that's going to happen in mid-June, where you know, a very high-level leader is going to be talking to his organization of about 6,000 people. Him and two of his other people are going to be in a room, and then we're going to frame up, you know, the fourth person on screen. So it'll be it's become I'd almost say like it's become like a rehearsal that we have to figure out. How do we make it feel real? How do we make it feel like Good Morning America? So, you know, we set up the video conferencing room, we get it all set up, and then we've got this other screen that we're going to roll into it to help provide those capabilities, so that it's not just a screen that's sitting in the room, it's actually people in the room talking to each other, engaging the people in the audience, and having this other, you know, asset in the room that they can basically communicate through. So it represents a person even if it's on a rollabout.
Right. Great. Harold, why don't you tell everybody a little bit about what's going on at Aetna?
Yeah, sure. We're pretty much very similar in being a very legacy-based technology company at Aetna. There's only been a sudden shift for technologies. A lot of the stuff we have was older, and I guess the funny thing is you might want to talk to me in a year, and I'll let you know how everything works out, because we're currently in the middle of two very large-scale projects at Aetna. One is a complete overhaul of the video conferencing architecture, and the other is completely renewing and revising the streaming solution. So both of those fall under mine. I had a very long head of hair prior to about 6 months ago. But it's Aetna's drive has become an IT healthcare company, so they really want to be more cutting edge, more like, you know, creating the apps and getting, you know, fixing them after, you know, post, which traditionally goes completely counter to anything that most corporations want to do. They usually, you know, analyze it to death and take forever to get something out. So we're currently in the process of doing that. And with video conferencing, it's a complete change because we're going from one manufacturer to a complete different manufacturer. So endpoints will be crossing over, so we have to worry about that. We have the WebEx and Link and Microsoft, you know, Cisco fun. Then we have, you know, classic mobile devices, you know, and corporate mobile devices versus bring your own devices. So it's been a challenge. With the streaming, the big nut to crack is the virtual machines, and that's been a real challenge for us. We think we might get past it, but it's not been easy. And with that, it's a kind of a strange thing. They have about 56,000 employees, but 44,000 VM devices. I happen to have 3 VM devices, so it's not one for every person, but when you realize there are potentially 44,000 units being looked at on a VM, if you can't support VM, you're basically dead on the company level. And that's probably the number one complaint that we have, and we're working on.
Yeah, and the challenge there is that in a virtual desktop environment, your computer is actually in a data center somewhere in, you know, at the corporate headquarters or in the corporate data center, and you're just viewing the screen over the network. But that works fine if you're just moving your mouse around on the screen. But if you're trying to send full motion video over that, it's hugely inefficient because that's not really what it was built to do. So it ends up crushing the virtual machine host, and then it also uses a ton of bandwidth to get down to the person. So and this is also the situation with, you know, like Lync, is that they take the video stream outside of that, you know, virtual desktop, and then it just kind of overlays on top of the actual virtual desktop image. So it's an interesting approach, but it's extraordinarily challenging.
Yeah, and add to it that we at Aetna now, the new direction is try not to say no to any requests. So we have every type of virtual machine out there, not one flavor. So there's XenApp, XenDesktop, Citrix, you know, all sorts of ways to connect. And then everybody has a different device. They have an Android, and every once in a while you'll find somebody has a Windows phone, and that's, you know, you wonder why, but they do.
Right.
And then, you know, so all of those devices, and now whenever you want to get a new product out there, the big challenge is getting what version of virtual machine you're on versus what version can you be, would be accepted in a video format. So it's a big challenge. It's not like you're just doing one button. You're probably touching every device, and it's tough.
And then similar to Aaron, there's kind of different levels of webcasting that you're doing, right?
Yep.
Like there might be the CEO that's in an auditorium that's got a direct fiber connection into the studio.
Yep. Yeah, we have a full studio, full production studio, but when the CEO speaks, he's in an auditorium, and it's a very large theater, if you will, and they go fiber back and they run it out, and it's full production. But the challenge comes into that when, you know, you have anybody can be in the room, but then anybody in the building is viewing the stream, and they might be in a conference room. So we have video conferencing connected to those streams. We have no mobile at the moment. The VMs are sketchy at best right now. So there's a big challenge for that. The CEO just finished his meeting recently, and there were, I want to say it was a light attended one, and it was only 20-something thousand, 22,000. But normally we can get as high as 40,000 of the 60. You know, you got consultants and whatnot, so about 60,000. So you can get, you know, 2/3 of your staff people viewing the stream.
That's a huge number, by the way. Like that, most of the numbers I've heard is, you know, if you're going to do a CEO broadcast, it might be 10 to 20% most of your population. So
Yeah.
there's that's a very big viewer ratio. And then the other thing is, so there's a CEO broadcast which happens, you know, once a quarter, but then there's, you know, 15 to 30 events that might go on in a month, and some of the smaller events would be held in a video conference room because it's in a field office, and that's
Yep.
the best way to get the video back to the production area where that can then be streamed out.
And we're also limited to, we only have one stream done per, you know, only one concurrent, and we can't have 2 live events, so that's always a challenge within the team for streaming is, you know, who gets bumped, but it's only one. But with the new products, they're envisioning more, potentially more requests, more ad hoc style streams. So we're probably going to have to look at a multiple streaming format and multiple, you know, URLs. We only keep one for the senior levels. That's the one to always be, and everybody else can get a kind of a generated URL.
Yeah, and finally, they just recently upgraded that studio to HD. All the streaming equipment's getting upgraded to HD. The video conferencing equipment already has. But the problem is the streaming solution was older, so it was using a standard definition video conference to get it back to the studio, which already has very limited quality, and then streaming it out as a standard definition video in like a 320 by 240. So it's, you know, the quality is one of the things that the initiative was to improve, and again, all those investments that are being made are able to be leveraged as an input source to the streaming system. Jackson, why don't you tell us what's going on at Northern Iowa?
Upper Iowa.
Oh, Upper Iowa,
I'm
sorry.
actually in a little different industry than these guys. So I'm in higher ed, and we're in the position where we have about 28 locations in the U.S. and 3 to 4 overseas. So similarly to some of these other companies, we have staff around the world, but we have students around the world too. And so for the past 8 years, we've been slowly implementing video conferencing, video streaming to communicate and connect with all those various audiences that we have. And so it gets interesting because some of you know higher ed is a little decentralized. So what I'm about to tell you is not quite a unified communication system, but it is coordinated fairly well. And so essentially what we've got is we've got video streaming that is strictly for large forums or events for our staff around the world or students if it's a guest speaker or a graduation ceremony or whatnot. And then we have athletics. And so athletics, as with a lot of colleges, kind of do their own thing with their streaming. They've got the system in place. And some of our feeds go to a TV station as well. And then we've got our video conferencing that I don't deal directly with, but indirectly a little bit with IT. And so it's coordinated with IT. We use Zoom, which is a virtual web conferencing. That's actually very effective. It's very simple. And the reason that we've kind of kept with it is because once people are able to use it, they can log on to any computer. They don't need any extra equipment. And a meeting can be set up in a room anywhere. And so it requires less resources once enough people know how to use it. And so that's key. And then the other piece, which is a little different, but it's lecture capture for students and professors. And we use a system called Tegrity, which is very effective as well. And that is similarly pretty efficient because once the professors know how to use it, they can capture it, and it's automatically recorded, archived, it can be searched, all those things. So
how do they access the content? Is it through the Tegrity interface?
Yes,
or?
yeah.
Okay.
So.
And can they sort of embed those into their learning management systems?
Yes. Yes. So yeah, a lot of different levels there between the video streaming, the video conferencing, the lecture capture, but ultimately I think I'd like to see a little bit more unified system, but we don't exactly have one office that with like 10 people that's all they do, so.
Yeah, I think I listened in on the higher ed panel. I think it was yesterday, and everybody was saying athletics is different. Right. They're on their own, and then different. It's in a lot of colleges and universities. There's different sections that are doing different things, but
it's just finding a way to make it effective because the people on the other end just want it to work.
Right.
I mean, it's not that our staff care how we made it work, I mean, they just want it to work, and they want a way that they can communicate with our main central campus where things are run. So,
well, especially when it's in front of students, the students are paying a lot of money to attend the college, right? So if you are 5 minutes late because you can't get your class going because of
we actually
some
had that happen
issue
once. Actually, we had a stream. We had some difficulties with the stream, and it was actually I forget which forum it was, but yeah, we actually lost some of them because it just took a little bit too long. So,
right,
things happen like that.
Right. All right. Well, we got about 20 minutes left. I wanted to pause here and just see if there was any questions from the crowd at this point. Anybody? Come on. There's only 20 minutes left of the show. Don't be shy. Yeah.
Have any of you started actually integrating Link itself into your streaming capabilities?
Well, the question is, has anybody up here integrated Link into streaming? I know from an Aetna perspective, it's Link is definitely one of the, I'll call it a staple standard technologies. There's definitely it built into our plans. We're not there yet. The plan at Aetna is ultimately, if you have video, it should integrate. So Link, WebEx video, traditional video, they're all going to be able, hopefully be able to communicate and collaborate. Sounds great in theory. Wait and see how that comes out. But yeah, we definitely are going to plan on using it. We have Link room systems deployed. We're starting to deploy more of those. So where we find a lot of interest is more for, not for streaming, but for the collaborative sessions, work sessions, and that's where I think Link does a pretty good job with whiteboarding and collaboration. I'm not a big fan of their video, but at the same point, it's like good enough video. Whereas our senior executives would never walk up to a whiteboard and touch it unless they had somebody else's finger doing it, I guess. But and that's where we have to build it, and Aetna is really looking at that closely, and hopefully it'll tie in. Will it work with streaming? Maybe, hopefully. Can you do anything?
Yeah, so definitely not. Matter of fact, I couldn't imagine the floodgate of 270-some thousand employees wanting to do web streaming from Link clients. That actually hurt my brain when you asked the question because I don't know the experience. I don't know what the viewership would be like. Those type of things. I think there's ways that they can do it, and within the applications. I mean, it'll support large events. I think that's one of the features of that product. So definitely, there's other ways to accomplish the same thing. I think it'll support up to 2,000 or 5,000 people, something like that. And all the flavors out there kind of have their large event package, and that's kind of how I would imagine that we'll probably see that progress. But I think it's just different type of audiences and trying to figure out, how are those going to be, successful.
I could see us taking a Link video feed and going through video conferencing and then streaming it as if it was a video endpoint versus a Link endpoint from using that. So that
I could see like a production side of it too. Like if you were if you're doing a town hall and you wanted people to pop their face up on screen and ask questions, that would be kind of a neat way to do it. And I could see how I could already figure out how to make that work. And I'm looking at my engineer going, "We got to play with that one." But definitely, I think we can. I could see some aspects of Link integrating into the experience. It's just a matter of, what's the overall goal for, the event.
At Ustream, we've seen some customers, they're not truly integrating Link, but they're using a communication system like Link to bring in a single contributor as part of a larger overall presentation. So the presentation's still originating from, let's say, the presentation theater, and we're calling in the guy who runs Europe for to contribute to that, and if you're going to bring in multiple people from different destinations, then it's an easy way to include them in the broadcast. There's not really any specific video streaming integration that's happening there, apart from bringing the stream back to the NOC, capturing it as part of the presentation, combining it with the other elements and making it look great, and streaming it back out to the rest of the company. But I would say it's an increasing trend where people want to do more inclusive things, as opposed to here's just one or two people telling you what's going on in the company. People want to hear directly from the folks in the field and include as many people as possible. So I think we're going to see more and more of that.
And don't forget the Skype for Business. How is that going to play in there? So
I think in a lot of organizations, the take up of Link or Skype for Business seems to be, we use it for IM first, then people get comfortable with it, then they go to the next level and they start using it for screen sharing and whiteboarding, and then they say, oh, actually I can make a phone call with this too, and then they start using it for that, and then it's video. But I think, from the live streaming perspective, using Link as an input into something where you could bring in another remote contributor again, that's a good use case. I think more and more people are going to want to start recording those, recording their sessions too, their meetings, and then putting that into a video portal so that they can access that content. And then if it's indexed and it's searchable, then if you missed a meeting and you needed to just see the 10 minutes that really mattered, you can drill down to it a little bit much more quickly.
I think it's probably just for, with Aetna, but how, with a crossover between all these different systems, because at Emory University, we have desktop video conferencing, Adobe Connect, we have, Citrix systems in healthcare, which is supposed to support desktop video conferencing, but our configuration doesn't yet. And then we have true video conferencing, MCU, and all these. How do you roll or get HIPAA compliance overlaid onto all of these interconnections?
That's a great question. I guess the good news is early on, it's all internal Aetna. So where we would be mostly HIPAA compliant is we don't record anything. Even the live streams, our CEO's live streams, they go through legal. I mean, it's still, before it's available for even an on-demand, it tends to go through at least some layer of compliance or legal. Externally facing, there's a project that I'm kind of on the periphery on, and it's for that chat video based for any healthcare questions that come in from the outside. So I know there's a very deep discussion about how that's going to work with compliance and with HIPAA and Sarbanes-Oxley and everything else you can think of. And so yeah, it's going to be a very challenging scenario, but luckily with the internal, we don't have as big of a challenge. But
And I think one of the reasons you chose the new bridging infrastructure you did was because it's supposed to work with the variety of different endpoints that are going to be connecting to it. And certainly if that was the case and you needed to have that level of security, you're going to want to make sure that if it's a link call coming into the bridge, then it's got to be encrypted. If it's a traditional endpoint, it's got to be encrypted. Everything needs to be encrypted, and then, as Harold mentioned, your
we're running
retention.
into challenges with encryption, and especially if we're federating with another company or we're using another company, and it becomes a challenge. I know even within Aetna, we have offices in Dubai, and they're ISDN. So we wanted to redo our video conferencing architecture, and we still have to put an ISDN circuit in. And it's like, really?
So is the VA. We have to connect with them weekly.
Yeah. There you go. So.
They only connect ISDN out of their network.
That seems crazy.
Yeah, we have, and there are challenges with that. Even within Aetna, there's questions about, we traditionally schedule every video conference, and it's done scheduled, and then now to introduce ad hoc video conferencing, well, first of all, if you have a mobile device, that's kind of difficult. And second thing is if you just launch a call and someone else is in the room and they haven't ended it, is it going to be auto answer? Is it going to be manual answer? So there's a whole host of, and what we're doing is slowly opening up these test cases, and which we're not basically opening the floodgates and just waiting for things to fail. We'll slowly introduce something and go, okay, how is this working? Let's take a pilot of this group and try that. And once it gets past security, then we're...
The desktop conferencing, ad hoc conferencing is much more difficult to manage.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, just their sheer volume of users and not as much. I mean, when you've got 10 endpoints, you know that your maximum exposure is 10 calls, right? Versus if you've got,
5,000.
yeah.
And we also have the challenge of, every employee has a link. So every employee can have an IM session. Now, every employee technically can have a video session, but we have WebEx. So we've had people complain, why can't I open my WebEx session on the link room system?
We
That's
just
it.
rolled out,
So-
are in the process of rolling out Office 365, and Microsoft just turned on video streaming, which allowed everyone with an ID, 32,000 people, create their own video channel. Which we
Turned off.
turned off. Microsoft turned it back on. So we
Yeah.
finally got it turned off, but it gives a streaming capability to everyone if we allow it.
Yeah, that's a new capability they just recently rolled out as part of Office 365. That only does on demand, as far as I know right now. But it does use, if you've got a lot of users that are now publishing videos, and if there's, you got to have a good business reason for that, or else it can eat up enormous amounts of storage, and they charge you for that.
What they're giving is every user has 50 gigs of content, and then you
Oh, they have a
put
per-
whatever you want in that 50 gigs.
Right. Interesting.
I have a question for the audience, if I can
Yeah,
flip
go
the
ahead.
panel a little bit.
There's a question over here.
Okay, yeah, well, I'll try to keep it quick then. So I think Aaron and others touched on, people have high expectations of a really engaging experience when they're watching a video in their company. They really want, they want to feel that production quality is high. They often want to be engaged as well. I mean, the point of this is to engage them and to really make them feel like I'm excited about where this company is headed. I understand the strategy that's coming from the top. I know what we're supposed to do next. Usually that leads to questions. An engaged audience plus communicating new relevant information usually leads to questions. And a lot of companies, take the approach of if you have questions, send them by email and a moderator will decide which ones to pose to the people who are presenting. But my question to you is, maybe a show of hands for who is currently satisfied with the way that the audience who's watching the video can engage in a discussion and ask questions while the video stream is ongoing. So raise your hand if you are delighted with the way that's currently working in your company. And so we got 3 hands, it looks like, out of about 30 people. That was actually a little lower than I expected. I thought we might hit 20%, but hey, that's not bad. So then to the panel, I guess I'm curious, what are you guys doing, or what are you seeing, or what requests are you getting for how that should happen to make people more engaged in the experience?
With our live streams, we use chat. So people at other locations basically can chat with each other, ask us at the actual event who are moderating any questions. And so we communicate that way, or they're able to communicate that way with the forum or the event that's happening. And yeah, it's worked pretty well. We haven't gotten demands by them for something more yet, so that's good, and it's worked fairly effectively. But yeah.
Great.
From Aetna perspective, when the CEO speaks, they have the moderator and they have email and IM chat. However, they also have audio conference lines open with a moderated bridge, so they can ask the questions there. And they also bring in video conferencing, and what he'll do is, I think his line is usually, we'll go to TV Land and see if anybody has questions. It's funny, 99% of them never have a question because they don't want to be on a camera asking a question to the CEO. So they're actually much more comfortable sending an email or an IM because they don't physically go out there. So,
Good.
but I would like it to be a little cleaner.
To combine those questions and
Well, to be able to combine it,
yeah.
and however, and almost make it like you can pick and choose how you want that. Well, right now, it's unless you have a video conference session up, unless you have an audio conference session up, it's only email IM.
Yeah.
Yeah, so there's a lot of different ways we're doing it today. The first thing we focused on is we want to leverage the new technology that's available today. So we're using texting, where people can text their questions to the moderators. What we're finding is anonymous is huge. You're going to get the real questions if you go anonymous. If it's calling people out, like you were mentioning, we like to put all our interns in the video conference rooms because they're not afraid to ask the questions. But I think it's really about how do you make people feel comfortable and protected. So we do. We basically, my team receives all the questions. If we know who it is, we don't say who it is. Sometimes we'll say, here's a question from Iowa, so that, people can relate to, hey, this is a question coming from another state. those type of things. But for the most part, we want to protect people. We want them to feel that their question is honored and treated as valuable. The other thing we have is, so we did a big town hall a while back, and we had 60,000 people invited. The questions were just flooding in. The other thing we're using is our internal social media, which that's not anonymous. That's throwing your questions out there. And we had a moderator going, okay, such and such, and Arkansas just asked this question, because it's there. Everybody sees it, because our social media is fully integrated. So all of a sudden, hey, if I'm going to throw a question out there, it's going to be a question. And there were some pretty big, tough questions out there. I thought, wow, I wouldn't ask that question. but no, I think it's really about making the technology, that you have. I think, it's really about integrating all the technology and not just the video communications aspects of it.
Yeah, I think it's, chat, voice, or video, and the more that that's integrated into the solution, so it's not like you have to have a separate phone bridge and, separate chat window here, and, the more it could be integrated into the solution, so it's seamless, I think the better, probably the more used it would be as well. If I could watch a webcast and then hit a little button and say, ask a question, how do you want to ask, or something like that. Yeah. So we had another question over here.
I just wondered if you now could speak to the business conversations that have gone into either the expansions and improving sort of just broadly about how these communication tools are going to get implemented and used on a regular basis.
Yeah, I think that one's aimed at me.
Specifically.
So the question is, how are we communicating our capabilities?
Well, really, how we are having the conversation with the business leaders and the other people who are going to be using these systems, that their capabilities are there and what they can get out of them.
Yeah, so maybe how are we marketing our capabilities to our customers internally? And I know that one's aimed at me because he works in our organization. But so, very quietly right now. I know that once we've perfected it, and I would say we haven't quite perfected our service offering, but once we have it perfected, it's going to be a floodgate, and everyone's going to want to use it to talk to their staff. So we've been very strategic about who we talk to, how we talk to them. Really, we've been kind of letting people knock on our door and ask, hey, this is what we want to do, and finding them a solution based on the techniques and technologies we have in place. But I don't think it's the right answer. It's just a matter of I want a level of comfort before we let that floodgate, open up all the way.
And at Aetna, we have social media, internal social media, and there's our group of, we'll call it AV collaboration engineering, whatever you want to call, whatever our new name is. We report into a social and collaboration engineering, so essentially any form of communication other than a phone or an email is under one person. So he's been reaching out to all the business units themselves and setting up meetings and attending their staff meetings and telling them about the new technologies. Every AV site or project that we have, and I think there's currently, 75 or 80 active projects right now. We meet with the business owners at those sites and we walk through the technologies we have. Link happens to be one of the big ones right now where people are trying to figure out what's the use case for Link and how they can do it. I'm working on one for the UK right now, and their biggest concern is, well, what's the latency or network requirements for us to meet with Dubai and India? And we have to do a lot of work on that. But every AV project, we do ask them, what are you trying to achieve here? As far as like the new products with video conferencing, we're definitely getting piloted, heavy power users, different groups. Like we have one group that wants to do like VMRs, and they want the VMR stuff. They want to have that meeting room that they can just use whenever. So we know the guys that want to do that. What people have, want to have conference room video conferencing, and now they want to integrate something else into it, or using a Logitech camera and slapping it on a monitor. So we're We constantly do that, and that's how Aetna's been doing that in the past. This is a change in the last year, year and a half. In the past, it was, you know, word of mouth. Enough people complained to somebody, it got back down, and, you know, usually you're told to do it before you even realized it wasn't going to work. So now it's a lot different.
Video conferencing wise, we're not too limited because with Zoom, if anybody wants to do their Zoom meeting, they can. But you know, video streaming wise, I think we've gotten a handle on it now. But there was a time where everybody would, I want to do a live stream. Well, do you want to do a live stream or you want it videoed, you know, or filmed? That's two different things. And what constitutes what's worthy of it being live streamed? Like, you know, who's the audience? Are people actually going to watch it? Because this takes time and resources to set up. And so it has gotten a lot better, and I think it's pretty much reserved a lot for our executive leadership team to communicate with the either students or our staff around the world. But it's still always a challenge, I think, to communicate it, you know, to people when and what is worthy of a live stream.
Yeah, the storage aspect has been a topic of conversation lately with our senior VPs because they're concerned about opening the floodgates for everybody creating a stream. And then, you know, Andy would know this I think we have every stream ever recorded at Aetna. We have every one of them. Even if there were 2 people who viewed it, we still have it somewhere.
Same here.
So it's kind of, you know, I think it goes back to '99 to put it in perspective, and then realize that we have every stream. When do we, you know, how do we manage that? How do we get rid of them? How do we, it's a challenge, and it's, you know, it's something that it's above my pay grade to figure it out, but it's a challenge to figure out who's going to ultimately allow these streams to, I guess, expire.
Yeah, I think it's really important to have success in this space is to have folks both from the business side of things, you know, marketing, communications, corporate communications, people that want these capabilities to be able to reach out to their constituents, be involved and help, you know, come up with the requirements and tell, you know, the IT organization what they want to do. And obviously the IT organization needs to be involved in order to make sure it's going to work on the network, it's not going to overwhelm the network, you know, things like that. So I think the most successful deployments have a combination of, you know, people that are vested in it from both sides. And if it's being driven by one side or the other, it's typically going to have issues, in my opinion.
From a vendor perspective, just real quick on your question, I think we realized, you know, that as a provider of technology, many people in the leadership positions in companies, and indeed many people in the employee base, don't even think about this topic that we're discussing on the panel. For them, it's sort of like, why doesn't all this stuff do everything that I want it to do anyway, right? It's all video technology. We spend a lot of money on it. Why can't it stream when I need it to stream and do one-to-one communications when I want it to do that? And why is there such differences between these systems? So as a vendor, we're thinking about that a lot. We're thinking about how, you know, this process of unification that is the very topic of this discussion is something that we all have to make a lot of progress on so that people feel like there's really not a lot of effort or obstacles or even things to be thought through, that they can use the tools that they've purchased, whatever the objective is, whether it's reaching individuals, whether it's engaging the entire company, whether it's doing that online after the fact and giving them content portals they can watch in, or letting them participate in a live conversation. And that's really the long-term goal for us as a vendor, to figure out how we can participate in that ecosystem to make these tools create that capability for companies without them having to put a lot of effort into figuring out how to assemble them.
One last question, then.
What production challenges do you have when you start integrating video conferencing and Link and other things like that? Echo is one of the problems we ran into. Are there any other problems that you've seen, and how did you overcome?
So what production challenges do we see? And I would say when we're integrating all these devices, I think, yeah, I mean, I could see where you could run into some echo problems. We really do a lot of dry rehearsals to get those things, or dress rehearsals, I think, dry runs, to get those things weeded out and figured out before we go to the actual event. I think we do 2 or 3 events actually before our actual event. The big thing I see affecting us the most is latency. You know, you're adding a lot of inherent latency just by pulling in all these devices around the world at times into these experiences, and then you're sending those out. And you know, it's really about educating the presenters. Hey, when you ask a question, you know, it could be a minute before someone actually heard that. You know, and sometimes they'll think that dead space, you know, is you know, no one's paying attention to me, you know, and so they'll jump to the next thing, and then all of a sudden the questions start flooding in and those type of things. So it's really about, you know, you've almost got to moderate your whole entire experience to say, you know, at this point, you're going to ask this question, recognize it's going to take a minute before your question actually gets heard to your farthest, you know, audience. And then, you know, in the interim, you got to find 5 more people to start asking questions. So ask your question, get it up there, and fill the dead space. You know, silence is killer in our industry. And, you know, I mean, if you think back to radio, dead silence was, you know, the end of a radio channel usually. And so that's the same in video.
Yeah, we haven't gotten as far with the interoperability, so like I said, joking around, ask me next year, I'll probably tell you a whole bunch of things, but yeah, I think the key to it is put them in a dev environment and beat the hell out of it while you can, and try all sorts of different interop, and that's what we're going to plan on doing. We're not rolling it out. You know, the good news for most of my projects are we have a deadline, but that deadline is to meet a certain requirement, not the complete requirement. So, like for example, in June of this year, our video conferencing project is set to meets exactly what we do today, which isn't all that much. So we can do that. And then by the end of the year, we want to roll out all these other things, but they may not be called general availability, but they'll be tested and everything else. So I think if you have the luxury of time and testing, we'll find out a whole bunch of problems. I know there's going to be interop issues with Link and WebEx and, you know, telepresence and some video conferencing endpoint that I'm not aware of yet, or desktop, which is, you know, a challenge.
I'll just touch really quick. I think I agree that latency, because it seems like the people running the meeting or the forum just don't get it, that there's going to be a little bit of latency no matter what, and sometimes it's a hard conversation to explain. You know, they just want it to work, they want it to be instant, want it to be live, and that's just not how it works usually.
You know, you just brought up something with that. Now, one last thing is, a lot of our offices have really small pipes. You know, and I joke, I have fiber in my house. We don't have fiber in offices. I mean, I can watch. You know, my kids can be on their Xboxes, and I could be on something, and I never have a problem with watching Netflix or whatever while somebody else is doing. Go to an office and do that. You know, you got a T1. It's like, really? It's like, now you want to know why you can't run a 1 meg video over one T1 that's in there with 30 people? So I think that's the challenge that we have to break from a lot of the, you know, our transmission teams that bring in these networks. They have to start realizing that, yeah, you might have saved some money by putting that in, but now you're killing your experience for the end user, and that's where we're going to have to get everybody on board with that, and hopefully they will all be.
All right, well, we're a little bit over here, so thanks everybody for sticking around. I hope you enjoyed the show, and look forward to seeing you next year. And Streaming Media West is out in California in November. So thanks a lot for coming, and safe travels home.
Thank you.